tonight, we begin with something gloriously exhausting. The daily ordeal of getting dressed as a Victorian woman. Forget the period dramas where a lady glides downstairs in silk looking effortlessly serene. The truth is that simply putting on clothes in the 1800s was a full contact sport. One involving whalebone, several miles of lace, roughly 15 pounds of fabric, and the genuine risk of passing out somewhere between the corset and the coffee. Have you ever wondered how long it takes to get dressed when your outfit has more moving parts than a pocket watch? Could you survive a corset laced by a maid who was mildly annoyed with you that morning? Ever tried to sit down in a steel cage roughly the size of a garden she would, or bend over to retrieve a dropped hairpin while wearing 30 yards of skirt? What exactly happens if you need the privy and you are conservatively 11 garments deep? And how precisely does one fasten 40 tiny boot buttons with fingers that have already gone numb? Well, you are about to find out. Congratulations! You have just woken up in 1875 in a freezing bedroom somewhere in respectable England, and you have roughly 2 hours of hard labor ahead of you before you're even allowed to be seen at breakfast. Good luck! The day begins flat on your back, staring at the ceiling, dreading the sheer amount of work between you and breakfast. There is no central heating. The air in the room is roughly the temperature of a disappointed glare. Somewhere across the room sits the reason you cannot simply roll out of bed and start your day. A towering, folded, layered heap of clothing that would make a modern person weep. Where is the first great indignity of Victorian dressing? You physically cannot do most of it by yourself. The buttons are on the back. The laces are on the back. Half the hooks are in places your arms were simply never designed to reach. So if you are a woman of means, you have a lady's maid, a patient soul whose entire morning is devoted to assembling you like a very complicated piece of flat-pack furniture. Think of her as a personal stylist, valet, hairdresser, and seamstress rolled into one. Except she also lived in your house, worked staggeringly long hours, and earned a wage that would not impress a modern teenager. A wealthy Victorian woman, for all her status and silk, was in a very literal sense unable to clothe herself. She could not lace her own corset to the proper tension. She could not fasten the endless spine of buttons marching up her back. She could not reach the hooks at her waist. Her independence, so prized in every drawing-room conversation, quietly evaporated the moment she stood in her chemise and needed a second pair of hands. It is a strange kind of luxury being so grandly dressed that you are helpless without staff. A bad maid, or one who was quietly seething about something you said last Tuesday, held a surprising amount of power over your comfort. You want this woman on your side. It is time to actually put something on. And we start at the bottom of the pile with the chemise. Picture a plain, loose, knee-length shift made of linen or cotton, roughly as glamorous as a pillowcase with armholes. Its job is simple but heroic. It sits directly against your skin and absorbs all the sweat, so that the fabulously expensive layers on top of it never have to touch your body, because those layers, as we will soon discover, almost never get washed. The chemise was the unsung sponge holding this entire operation together. It was mercifully comfortable, which is a word you will not hear much for the rest of this list. Soft, loose, unstructured. It was the one thing you put on that did not pinch, itchy, or compress you. Enjoy it. This is the last time all day your torso will be free. Next come the drawers, the Victorian ancestor of underwear. And here is where things get delightfully practical. For much of the era, drawers were open at that is to say, they were split right down the middle and left conveniently unstitched. This was not some daring fashion statement. It was pure engineering. Once you are buried under a corset, a cage, and several petticoats, actually removing your underwear becomes a physical impossibility. So the seams simply stayed open, allowing a lady to answer nature's call without disassembling half her outfit. Genius! If you do not think about it too hard. Quick! Put your stockings on, and do it now while you still can. This is the golden window, the last moment. Your torso will bend for the foreseeable future. Once the corset arrives, reaching your own feet becomes a distant memory. The knitted wool or silk stockings go on first, rolled up over the knee and held in place by garters. If you forget this step and try to add stockings after lacing up, you will find yourself either summoning the maid back or performing a slow, red-faced negotiation with the floor. And now you have been warned. There is a correct order to dressing, and it is not arbitrary. It is dictated entirely by which parts of your body will still function once the scaffolding goes up. Stand up straight, because that is going to be your default posture for the next 16 hours, whether you like it or not. The bendable portion of your day is officially over. What comes next does not bend. What comes next is the corset. It arrives like a summons, made of sturdy cotton or coutil, and stiffened with strips of whalebone or steel. Chi wraps around your middle and is laced tied up the back by someone standing behind you with their knee braced and their patience thinning. You grip the bedpost, they pull. The point is to smooth and support your shape into the fashionable silhouette of the moment. And the price of that shape is that you will now be aware of your own ribs for the rest of the day. Some women practiced what was called tight lacing, gradually cinching the corset smaller and smaller in pursuit of a waist you could supposedly circle with 2 hands. The wasp waist took its name from exactly what it sounds like, the dramatic pinch of an insect's middle, and it was the shape fashion drawings adored. But here is where we must be honest and pump the brakes on the lurid tales of women routinely removing ribs, of organs crushed to pulp, of waists cinched to a literal handspan, are mostly just that, tales. Most women laced their corsets for support and shape, snugly but sensibly in a way that let them go about the generally demanding physical work of running a household or laboring for a living. A washerwoman scrubbing linens all day was not tight lacing to a washed waist. She was wearing a sturdy, supportive corset that helped her heave and haul without racking her back. If you are dressing in the middle decades of the era, congratulations! It is time to climb into the cage. The crinoline is a vast, dome-shaped framework of flexible steel hoops suspended from your waist, and designed to hold your skirts out in an enormous bell shape, without you having to wear a dozen heavy petticoats to do it. In theory, it was a labor-saving miracle. In practice, you now occupy roughly the same footprint as a small dining table. Doorways become puzzles, chairs become enemies, and a strong gust of wind becomes a genuine public relations risk. The crinoline was invented as a mercy before it came along, achieving that fashionably wide, bell-shaped skirt meant piling on layer after layer of heavy petticoats, sometimes stiffened with horsehair, until a woman was hauling an exhausting mass of fabric around her legs all day. Fashion being fashion eventually got bored of the giant bell and moved all the drama to the back. Enter the bustle, a structure of pads, wire, or steel half hoops strapped to your lower back to project your skirts dramatically outward behind you. Suddenly, the fashionable shape is flat in front and shelved in the rear. A silhouette so pronounced you could reportedly balance a tea tray on it. Though please do not, sitting down now becomes a delicate maneuver of perching on the very front edge of a chair, while an entire architectural feature hovers behind you like a deeply committed shadow. The bustle was a small feat of re-engineering devoted entirely to the shape of your backside. Some clever designs even folded up When you said so that the whole apparatus could compress and then rebound when you stood again. By now, you may have noticed a recurring theme. Almost nothing you are wearing it can be fastened by the person actually wearing it. The corset laces up the back, the bodice buttons up the spine, the skirt hooks at a waist you can no longer comfortably reach or even see. Victorian woman's clothing was quite simply not designed for independence. It assumed at every stage that a second pair of hands would always be there, which is a lovely thought, until it is a cold morning, the maid is late, and you are standing in your camise wondering how on earth you are supposed to even begin. The very impracticality of a back-fastening bodice was, in its way, a status. A woman who could not dress herself was a woman who did not need to. The dependence was built into the design, and the dependence was part of the point. A fashionable Victorian woman, fully assembled at last, was crowned with a large, decorated hat, anchored by lengths of sharp steel, elegant from a distance, and mildly perilous up close. The headpin was a long, sharp steel pin, sometimes reaching 6 or 7 inches, driven through the hat and the hair to hold the whole assembly steady, and the big hat might need more than one. The image is a fitting one to end the dressing on. Beauty and hazard pinned together. Ornamentation secured by something you would not want jabbed into your shoulder on a crowded corner. You have been awake for 2 hours. You have been laced, pinned, buttoned, hooked, and anchored into place. You are finally dressed, and you will do it all again tomorrow. Heaven help you!